I've honestly got to say I never thought I'd see.
But of course, we're seeing both sides ebbing and flowing in terms of their clashes, but now word from the UN Secretary General in London, Ban Ki-moon, saying that this is unacceptable to have such action being perpetrated against peaceful demonstrators. I think he's certainly alluding to the fact that the government or even the president might be behind orchestrating these events.
It would certainly appear to be that way, and that's what all the anti-government protesters are saying, is that these scenes are being orchestrated by President Mubarak to allow him to say to the world that he can bring stability and security to Egypt, and that he would be able to be given himself by any means necessary. Now, I was in Tahrir Square when these clashes began, and I had been spent the morning wandering around commenting on how peaceful things were. It was a happy atmosphere, it was a communal atmosphere, people queuing up for water at the one tap in the middle of the square, waiting their turn, singing, obviously chanting for the downfall of the government, but certainly in a very peaceful and what anybody would call a very democratic way. Now, it was also the same scene yesterday in the square when perhaps a million people were here. Again, a million people or thereabouts in one part of the city, and virtually no clashes of any description, just purely peaceful people power. Now, fast forward the events until the arrival of the pro-government supporters, and when they first flooded into the square, they faced off with the anti-government protesters, and there was no violence. And on the anti-government side, some people's natural reaction when they saw this coming down was to arm themselves with some sticks and some rocks. Other people saying, no, put those down, this is peaceful, we're keeping it peaceful. Well, I can tell you what I'm seeing now is a long, long way from being peaceful.
Thank you very much, Dan. It's now 1500 hours GMT, 5 p.m. in Cairo. A curfew is supposed to be taking effect right now, but it's chaos in Cairo, as you can see on those live pictures there. There have been some very, very troubling developments in the last 3 hours. For the past 3 hours, there have been running street battles in and around Tahrir Square, where pro and anti-government supporters have been clashing. A lot of people injured. At least 100, according to one of our correspondents on the ground. Several skirmishes around Tahrir Square, especially on the side streets, as you can see on those live pictures there. And all this is happening as the army is standing by and watching. Jackie Rowland is one of our correspondents on the ground. She joins us live. Jackie, Tahrir Square is looking like a war zone right now.
It is, Polly. Tahrir Square has really become the focus of this battle for the future of Egypt. What we're watching is battle lines that are very fluid and can change very swiftly. Protesters have been using several military trucks that were basically hijacked by the pro-government supporters. These trucks have been pushed up and down the streets to the side of the Egyptian Museum as the battle line has moved back and forth. What we've seen in the last few minutes is people standing on top of one of the buildings just across the road from the museum have been hurling huge rocks and bricks from the rooftops down into the street below. We have seen people literally running for their lives. Just looking down there again, the rock throwing seems to have stopped, and now we're watching the pro-government forces coming again. I mean, they're throwing anything they can get hands on. I mean, we've seen chairs being thrown, rocks being thrown, and so that area just down by to the side of the museum is just really an area. It is a battlefield. It is the front line, and the front line is moving backwards very swiftly. Every now and again, one side will stage a charge. The question is, who are the people on the top of that building who are throwing chairs, rocks down at the crowd? You know, who are they representing? Are they on the side of the government, the pro-government demonstrators?
We are indeed seeing the people that you're just describing there, Jackie. People on top of buildings throwing any objects, I guess, they can find onto the crowds down there in Tahrir Square. Jackie, for the viewers who are just joining us now, just give us an idea of where exactly these clashes are taking place, because from what I understand, it's not actually happening inside the square itself.
Tahrir Square is really a key square in Egypt, a real central point. It always has been a focal point, and this idea of the key banners that we've seen in television pictures over recent days, the people demand the removal of the regime, those banners are still in place. But around the fringes of the square, this is where the battles are taking place. And it does seem to be quite well organised, because from what we can see, there are clashes going on, not just at this entrance to the square, close to the Egyptian Museum, but also we have seen tear gas being fired at other locations around the square. So it would appear that these pro-government demonstrators, these Mubarak supporters, have been converging on the square from different directions. So you're seeing these street battles being fought at different locations around the square. We saw intensive tear gas going off maybe half an hour ago near the Intercontinental Hotel, which is on the edge of the River Nile. Obviously, this battleground that you've been witnessing here, again, we're watching the pro-government demonstrators charging forward towards those trucks that they've been using as a front line. But the actual centre of the square is still with the protesters.
So the actual centre of Tahrir Square is still in the hands of anti-government demonstrators, you tell us. So the people we're seeing right now on the left-hand side of our screen, right next to the Egypt Museum, are pro-government supporters, if I understand you correctly. And if you look carefully, closely, on top of one of those buildings is what looks like a soldier standing and watching these crowds confront each other. He's on top of the museum building there. Jackie, you know, what is the army doing? Where are they?
Indeed, in the way that the army was standing by and policing, or if you like, facilitating the peaceful demonstrations of the past few days, the army now seems to be standing by and facilitating these violent clashes. Apart from a bit of tear gas that was fired just by the museum, where there was this one front line, and also over towards the Intercontinental Hotel, we think in the general vicinity of the American Embassy, the army, by and large, is observing from a distance, observing from the helicopter. The helicopter continues to circle round and round the square, but one gets the impression that the army is just kind of standing back and letting the two sides fight it out, which obviously does pose many questions about the position of the army. Up until now, there's been this feeling that the army was a neutral force. Indeed, the anti-government demonstrators welcomed the army onto the streets, and they saw the army as being with the people. The army stated quite clearly 48 hours ago that it would not use force against the people, but it's standing by and letting the pro-government people perpetrate force. So the army just seems to be standing by and just letting it happen while people are getting injured, and by all accounts, some people getting killed as well.
Thank you very much, Jackie. We'll be back with you in just a few minutes. Right now, let's speak to one of our other correspondents who's got a different vantage point. She's near Tahrir Square, very near Tahrir Square.